What's up? And welcome to the Mark C. Drumcast. It is a Wednesday, a beautiful Wednesday here in the Northeast. That was New Orleans is the New Vietnam by I Hate God. And I wanted to play that song because I've been working through that song with my students and my student bands. One of the things that has been coming up for my students when it comes to being in the student bands that I direct is that they have a tendency, and a lot of my students, if not all my students, and sometimes me, to look at something or to listen to something and immediately think, I can't do that. And so this is part of the process, right? As a teacher, as a director, part of my job is to help them to see that that's not necessarily true. Sure, there are some things that many of us can't do right away. But the idea that we need to look a little deeper before we make that decision, because again, it's a decision. If we look at something and say, I can't do that, it's a very kind of final thing. It is a decision. This is something that we're saying, okay, I can't do that. No, there's no way I can do that. Which is why I always like to add the word yet. I can't do that yet. It softens the edges of this idea. It gives us a path forward. It gives us the opportunity to work towards this thing that we feel we can't do right now. And that's a much more realistic approach to this kind of situation. So what we did was I sat with my student who's playing drums on the song, and he and I went over it. And I had done a little bit of listening, but not a lot. I didn't really study the song. But in that half an hour, as I was working with my student on the song, I learned the song much, much better than I had known it before. And so did he. And so the idea was that we kind of demystified the song. And just like I do with my students all the time with this written sheet music that they might have to perform, or an audition that they're doing, or a song they're doing in school band, we demystify the piece. So when we see a lot of notes on a page and we see a complicated, complex, challenging piece of drum music that we have to perform, instead of saying we can't do it, we need to kind of look at it and say, okay, what is familiar here? What do I know? What do I not know? What do I need clarification on? And how can I get familiar with what I'm doing here? Same thing with the song. I just encourage my students, hey, listen to the song. Just listen to the song. Listen to it, listen to it, listen to it. But even in, like I said, a shorter time as a half an hour, we actually went over a couple of songs, so maybe 15 minutes of the song. I was able to determine that the first chunk of riff, which is in the beginning of the song, it's a couple of different parts put together, but it's one whole section. It goes 4 times, 2 with no vocals, 2 with vocals. Then it changes to a different section of the music, which occurs 2 times. Then it goes back to the original beginnings with the verse, only 2 times, and then it goes back to the second part we talked about 4 times. So it's 4, 2, 2, 4, verse, chorus, verse, chorus. That's the most, I would say, the first half of the song. And so what we ended up doing was we ended up going through that first half of the song, and that's it. And then I said, well, listen to it more next week. Listen to specifically the second half of the song. Let's get the second half down. And in rehearsal, I sat in on the drums because my student was not available at the rehearsal. And I went over with the other students in the band, and we ran through the song a couple of times, the first half of it, to get the bass player, the guitar player on the same page with myself. It was a really fun and cool process, but the whole idea of demystifying songs and sheet music is super, super important, because I don't want our initial thought to be, I can't do that. Wow, look how tough that looks. Look how complicated that looks. That looks hard. That looks difficult. The first thought should be, okay, let me listen. Let me see what's going on. Wow, there are a lot of changes. And there are. There are a few changes in this song that I played for you earlier. But nothing super complex, nothing too challenging or difficult. The student who's playing it in my student band is more than capable of playing every part of the song properly. Now it's just a matter of figuring out what part goes where, for how long, what changes and accents does he have to play. So my performance of the song was just based on us going over it last night in band. And I know for me, I have more experience, but I'm trying to show my students that, hey, after we listen to it a few times and we establish this is one part, this is another part, there are maybe one or two more different parts in the song that happen in the second half. Okay, let's identify those and let's figure out how many times each one of those different parts occurs, in what order, and then how do we end it. So it's a really, really cool process. We can either map it out by writing it down, or we can listen and we can just try to become familiar with how the song actually goes. Same with sheet music. You know, you look at some things and you're like, wow, those are a lot of notes and a lot of rests and a lot of other things and dynamics and repeats and codas and del segnos and all kinds of things. What the heck do I do? Well, we start at the beginning and we scan through it and we say, hey, what do we recognize? What do we see as familiar? Okay, I know all of this stuff. Okay, so what's not familiar? This and this. Okay, this is what this is what that is. You are now familiar with everything that's on this page now. Now let's take it piece by piece, chunk by chunk, line by line, measure by measure, or beat by beat. You know, however we want to approach it. Let's take it in small chunks, small pieces, and then let's figure out what we need to figure out. What we find a lot of times when we're doing a piece of music, like a piece of sheet music or something like that for a NYSSMA recital or a school concert, is that there are sections that repeat. Just like in the song I played for you earlier, there are sections that repeat. So we just need to learn maybe 4 sections, and then they repeat. So once we figure out, okay, I can play each different section of this song. So that's taken care of. Now, let's just figure out how many times each section happens, where are the repeats, what do we have to do, how do we put it all together, how is this song assembled? And that's kind of the same way I approach music that I learn by listening. I don't know the word for that. What is that? It's auditorily? I don't know. By listening or by reading the music. Either way, the approach is the same. We take sections, we figure out what we know, we break it down piece by piece, chunk by chunk, as small as we need to get through it. And that's how we demystify stuff that may at first intimidate us. We can always dig into it. And it's usually the case that when I'm working with my students, after a few minutes of working through it, asking them what they think about it, asking them, hey, what's going on here? How do we count this? Things like that. They start to understand that, hey, you know what? This isn't so crazy. It looks crazy, but as we go through it, it's not as bad as I thought. That's where we need to get to when we are trying things that are challenging our abilities. So that's it for the Mark Z Drumcast. See you on Friday. Thanks for checking in, and I'll see you next time. I'll see you on the next go around.